Introduce our next guest. This is Mark Skorun, and how long have we known each other? Several years now.
3 or 4 years, something like that.
3, 4, 5 years, something like that. I found Mark on Craigslist. I was not looking for a date.
J-Day, don't lie. It was Craigslist too.
So, we've talked a lot about buying houses from realtors and going through the MLS, and I definitely, that's a good, easy, get into it, no stress strategy. But I wanted to bring Mark in because I do buy a lot of houses through Mark. So Mark is a wholesaler, and he can talk a little bit about what that means, what that role is to be a wholesaler, and how he works with the sellers, how he works with us as investor buyers, how he's able to find deals. He's making good commission on it. He's still giving you a really
wholesale
good
fee.
deal. Wholesale fee. Was that recording? Wholesale fee. He doesn't make any commission.
Assignment fee.
Assignment fee. See, there's this is the Jeff. I'm always calling stuff like what it seems like in my head, and then there's this whole legal, technical side. Assignment fee. I've never paid him a commission. I've only paid him an assignment fee.
Even the attorney sometimes. My attorney initially was like, yeah, do this, and then put the festival commission. I'm like, whoa. Assignment fee.
We're going to dig in deep to another aspect of the business, and you guys will have even more questions to ask. So, do you want to sit?
Yeah, sure. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, just to go over that real quick too. The difference is, as a wholesaler, you're not a broker. The realtor, you were a realtor, right? Anyone else realtors here? Yeah, you were too. Okay, so you'll appreciate that. As a wholesaler, we really don't sell the house. We basically sell paper.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. We sell the paper to the house. So, we get a property under contract direct to the bank, direct to the seller, direct to whoever it is. We tie it up with a cash contingency, 14-day inspection, or however long you can. Because then that gives us an equitable interest in that contract.
It just feels weird to sit. I'm moving these chairs. Let's just stand.
So
we're too hyper today.
Yeah, I know. Just going over this. I'm definitely the orange. Where Margaret's like, hey, can you come talk? I don't have any slides. I don't have anything.
When we do business together, we're so the same in that regard, which is good, and then maybe bad. But Jeff comes in and fixes any of the bad.
Yeah. She'll call me. I'm busy, so then I'll call her back. Nothing. And then, and then 24 hours later, finally, hey, text me back real quick, or what's going on with this case?
There's
doing one thing, we're doing another thing, we'll forget.
And neither of us, it doesn't even, sometimes we'll end mid conversation, and 2 weeks later, pick up right where we left at. What were we talking about? Oh, yeah. And then we buy a house.
What was I saying? Oh, so back to that real quick, let me just, so everyone, does everyone understand the difference? The gist of what wholesaling is, basically? Okay. So the realtor sells the house for the rehabber at the end. We kind of sell the contract to the house under a cash contingency. So the basics is, let's say you're a seller, I approach you and say, hey, you can list it with a realtor, or you can actually move it with me. We can actually sell it for this price. We agree to it. I've got the property under contract. I would call Margaret and say, hey, I got this great house in Elgin. Come take a look at this. If she agrees, I've got a contract with you. I get a contract with Margaret. You match it up, and then you bring it to the title company. Or here in Illinois, it's the attorney title company. Does everyone is this like an Illinois, Chicago local?
Mostly Illinois, Chicago.
Just so I can get
What line number is it on the HUD when it?
73.
Okay.
No,
That's what I figured.
So just to kind of,
if you guys are in here, we talk about geeking out, and Pedro and Alex, who are in the back, are also real estate investors. And it really, you guys are building this community together, and you will have exactly what we have, where you've got your team members, you've got everybody. Can you talk a little bit about how you find your sellers? So, when you say, Liz would be an example, and maybe she would be, because I know your mom's,
Man, so marketing, we could probably just, that could be like an 8-hour class all day. To kind of, bite-sized nuggets, I would say, for me, you try to go where everyone else isn't. But you want to have irons in the fire everywhere, if that makes sense. So for me as a wholesaler, when someone thinks about selling their house, whether it's online, offline, I want to be the medium that they go to. So you want to be in front of every single person all the time at every medium. But it just depends, how big you want to get to that point. If you just want to do a deal a month, the best thing to do is just create a relationship with asset managers, realtors, brokers. Say, hey, you got any pocket listings? Before you list them, I got some cash buyers. You got something in Elgin. I got buyers there. Network with other wholesalers. That's probably me and Pedro. We just closed on one. A couple weeks ago, a month ago.
month ago, yeah.
whatever, yeah, Glenview?
Yep.
So he called me up, hey, I got this deal in Glenview, do you have anyone for it? I said, yes, I've got a lot of buyers in Glenview. So we put it together.
And if he doesn't, he will find them.
Yeah, sure, I'll do whatever it takes. Legally, morally, ethically, but under those, outside of those framework, I'll do anything it takes. So I think that's the attitude you have to have. You know, no matter what gets in your way, you'll do whatever it takes. So I think, yeah, that deal, Pedro said, hey, I got this deal, let's put it together. We found someone pretty quick. I don't think there's any snags in that one. But the point is, right, what an easy way to do a deal where the leverage for both of us, right? He found the deal, I had the buyer, I didn't really have to spend any time on marketing, and he really, you know, he had to spend some time on marketing finding the lead, but he brought it to me, we matched it up, and that was what, $7,000 each?
Yeah,
Pretty quick, right? It was pretty seamless deal. So I think the whole goal is, but there's a million ways. You can call your realtors and tell them, you know, what areas you're looking for. There's HUD properties. I would suggest to you guys what, you got to like really think, all right, what kind of relational capital do I have? You know, because you might know a real good HUD broker or a real REO broker. So you got to spend time thinking about that and then really drill down on that. That's what I would do. Because the whole thing is, it's the Pareto principle. You're going to get 80% of your results from 20% of your activity, you know. So try to focus on whatever it is. If it's direct mail, you're doing really good with that, focus on that. Get that up and running and then go to another segment. So that's probably the best thing.
Yeah, and we talked about that niching into what you're going to do, and Mark he is the wholesaler, and he's done some other stuff, flipped some houses, rental properties, and that. But he is the wholesaler. That is his go-to business, and he's been very successful because he's focused on that as his primary business.
Yeah, let me just interject too. 'Cause are you guys all rehabbers? And I mean, just so I can kind of gauge, is it like a
Flippers.
Wannabes.
most
Flipping
flippers? Okay.
Wannabes, so.
Well, so the whole thing is like, this is why you want to consider wholesaling. What's really important is because it's cash flow. So like, even I don't know if you guys got jobs or if you do a rehab, right? You're not going to get paid right away. It might take 6 months, 9 months. It might take a year. However long it takes. So if you don't have a job or any other income coming in, that's what makes it tough in real estate. So if you get a wholesale deal that's closing every week, that's cash flow. That's paying all your bills. So that's what it's really important for. So if you have a job, that's good. Obviously, use that, and then you can do rehabs on the side. But the other thing too, even if you're like a successful rehabber, we were talking with John over here, right? Sometimes let's say you're working on 2 rehabs, either you don't have the time or the money to do another one, but a deal comes through you. You don't want to be a person that says no to make money. So you think maybe I'll call Mark. But if I have buyers, maybe I'll call buyer and just wholesale it instead of doing the rehab on it. You know what I mean? So you just have to think like a business owner. How can I monetize off everything that's coming to me? Does that make sense?
And as an investor, you want to know all of the components too. So for me, I've never wholesaled a deal, but I have a relationship with Mark because he sends me deals. He knows exactly what my demographic is that I'm looking for, and he gives us houses at even cheaper than when we went out and looked at houses and we say we're going to lowball these houses and buy them. We've bought houses for $25,000. That's kind of our
the wheelhouse.
My threshold is about $25,000 when I'm buying a house through Mark.
I know, she starts freaking out when I send her one at 30.
I'm like, are you kidding me?
What makes that different though, to buy one from a wholesaler at $25,000 versus going into the ones that we had at $50,000?
So with Mark, and there's a limited inventory with doing work with wholesaling. So Mark does a ton of work to go find the deals. For me, I'm not going to do that. I let him do that, and then he gets his assignment fee for all of the effort that he put into
Jeff's
it.
happy too.
I know, he grinned a little bit. But the benefit to me is that he is finding houses that I can't buy any other way unless I go do all that effort. So he's finding distressed sellers, all of these methods of picking up a house. They're not listing them on the MLS.
Right, but I'm saying, like you said, you get a little scared if he offers you one at $30,000.
No,
I was just kidding.
I'm just
if the numbers work, it's just a joke that she has. But.
It just happens to be that every house has been right around $25,000.
Yeah.
And
they all need rehab, but like for her, it's a business decision.
Yeah,
sure. So if the numbers make sense, they make sense. If there's equity there, it's not really an emotional decision; it's an equity. She, like as a buyer, you're going to be looking. We were just talking about that. Right? I don't care how the house looks, really. It's how does the end buyer think about it? You're buying for equity. That's it. It's not. There's no emotion. It's a business decision. Oh, go ahead.
I'll admit I'm confused. So we would either get houses from you to rehab, or if we had them to sell, like it sounded like you and Pedro did, we could sell.
Yeah, it was a co-wholesale joint venture. So
Okay.
the difference is, let's say you want to rehab a house, I can find you one, or another realtor, another wholesaler.
Yeah.
And actually, if you're looking for a rehab, just do what Margaret did. Go on Craigslist, right? Because how many buyers do that? Not really many, honestly. Not many buyers contact me off Craigslist, I'll be honest with you. A lot of wholesalers do. There's a lot of wholesalers
Yeah.
on Craigslist, but
And that was the ad I
80%
saw,
of
was he
success.
was looking to buy houses. And I'm like, well, who's this Yahoo trying to buy houses on Craigslist? I
Yeah.
got to figure out who he is. And we started talking. And
but I
that's how
commend you that you took action there, because not a lot of buyers do that. There's a lot of wholesale activity. So let's say you go to Craigslist and say, contact all the We Buy Houses guys, which there's a lot, and say, hey, send me your inventory, or I'm looking for a rehab in Park Fort, wherever. These are my parameters. So you tell them what you're looking for, and then they'll email you, what you have.
And Mark has relationships with virtually all of
Yeah,
them.
pretty much normal, I think.
So and the nice thing with me working with Mark is he narrows it down for me. So I've got some wholesale, they will send me list after list. I'm like, listen, you're sending me stuff I'm never going to buy, so don't waste my time. My benefit of working with somebody who's a wholesaler is they're acting on my behalf, sending me something. And Mark's worked with charities and all sorts of creative ways to get houses, and the benefit is that he's getting, if you're trying to sell a house, the benefit is that he's going to sell it fast and he's going to sell it for cash. So maybe it needs rehab and no realtor is going to touch it, or it's not owned by the bank. So he might have a house that's free and clear, grandma died, and it's been sitting there for 2 years. So the granddaughter doesn't want to deal with it, so Mark will meet up with somebody like that. I can sell it fast, but you're going to have to cut the price a little bit.
Yeah.
So we as investors who are flipping houses, we can buy houses for a fraction of the cost. Now our $25,000 houses, they're just not going to likely go onto the MLS, even if it is bank owned. So the banks, they will donate properties to charities because it's a better write-off. They get it off their books and then they can be done with it. But then those houses need to be handled. So for example, the charities have all these houses, and part of their strategy is to receive these. And I've donated the house we talked about in Joliet, which I bought for Mark
Sure,
actually.
that's right, yeah.
That house, when it burned down, I had an empty lot. I donated it to a charity. They turned around and sold it. So they
It
might
was your
have.
best flip that you had, right?
It was the best flip. Yeah, it was the most profitable. Maybe took some years off my life.
Mark was like, thank you, Vandals, for that, right?
Right? Squatters. Where's the squatters? So, that's an example, though, of he was able to get the house under assignment with this charity, who you know, too,
I bought many through that.
from partners. So
Charles?
you guys,
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
again, when you're in this world, it's a very small
Everyone knows everyone.
community. Everybody knows everybody.
So the other thing, let me add to that too, because you were asking where to market for. That's key, is distress. So if you're looking for a good wholesale deal, no matter what it is, whether it's a charity that says we got to sell this house, or asset manager, we really have to sell this house by this month, or a seller, whether they have like a bankruptcy, any kind of distress, whether it's like a physical distress or behavioral distress, that's what you want to target for. So probates, absentee, in-state, out-of-state, absentee, like you own, let's say you own a home in Wisconsin, but we live here, so you target them in Wisconsin, because you know that the propensity for them to be motivated is probably higher than someone, owner-occupant.
Yeah.
Fire damage, code violation, vacant, so there's so many ways. There really is. There's like 300 ways where you can be driving around, even driving home today. You can be driving down the road and looking for vacant houses.
So a lot of you
so
guys
you always
have
gotta-
sent me a message saying, hey, I see this vacant property, and I do the same thing, but the reality is, and I've done this, I find the vacant property, I'm not going to go and sit in front of the computer and do all that research. I'll send the address to Mark, and he'll do the research and see if it's he knows all the channels and he knows what to check for. So what he does is a completely specialized component of this business. I'm going to let him do what he does best so that I can keep doing what I do best. And I totally trust that he's going to do the research. We've never had any title issues. So let's talk about some, if you're an investor, rehabber, buying a property, what are some things that they should look out for? Because I know we've talked about title issues.
We haven't had any, right? But
We've never had any.
Really, especially in Illinois, I guess financial crimes is like the number one thing. We've run into so many just awkward, hilarious situations. But the biggest things you guys want to
we
watch
did have
out
one.
for, huh?
When I went into the wrong house to buy.
Oh yeah, in Elm or Connersville.
Yeah.
She literally walks into the wrong house and says, "All right, I'll take it." It was like what, 2 houses down.
Yeah.
And there was what, a contractor there, or the owner was there?
The owner. He was
and you're like, no, this is my house now, right?
I was this
That's classic.
close. I was at 2 hours. I was in 2 hours. I was leaving for a flight to go to Texas, and we were closing the day I came back. I was like frantic, and Jeff, poor Jeff. I mean, I called Mark and I'm like, the owner's not here. You know,
I remember.
I can't get into the house. So 3 times I went into this person, total random stranger's house, walked all through the house, took pictures, made a plan for rehabbing it. And then the final time when I was going with the contractor, you know, we're talking about the timing of things. So I got Sergio, who's meeting there, and I'm like, where are you? Where are you? He's like, I'm at the house. I'm like, no, I'm at the house. I'm like, you must be at the wrong house. He's like, I'm at the address that you gave me. And I'm like, that's weird. And I look down the street and I see his truck and I see him standing there talking to the owner. And in the meantime, I'm trying to square away who this Yahoo's that I'm talking to in my house. And I'm like, I called Mark and I'm like, listen, they're not even packed. I don't think they're moving out.
No, it was more like a heart attack.
It was a bit of a heart attack.
Oh my God.
And he's like, no, the house was vacant. And I was just so, again, another confused, like the house burning down in Joliet. And I'm talking to the guy who doesn't speak English very well. And so what happened is I walk around to the back and this guy's painting. I'm like, oh, like maybe it was his grandparents' house and he, you know, wants to pass it on and a little bit nicer. I said, you know, can I just let myself in the house? And he's like, yeah, go ahead.
That's kind of scary.
So I'm walking around and then he kind of comes in and in very choppy English, he said, are you from the insurance company? I said, no, I'm the buyer. And he's looking at me, and I said, yeah, we closed on this house on Tuesday. He goes, I just bought this house. And I was like, what Twilight Zone episode am I in? So that's when I call Mark, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on. This guy says that he already bought the house. So he's thinking that the seller is jerking us around. He calls the seller, and she's like, I'm here with the contractor.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God. Oh, like, I mean, just like panic, complete panic. I said, I've never seen this house that I'm going to go into. And worse, when I walked down there, I was like, this is the worst ever day of my life. The house was completely trashed. I would have paid double for it. And I'm sitting there, and the side of my minivan, just like, with Sergio, I'm like, I gotta go to the airport. I do not know what I'm gonna do about this house. And I said maybe $5,000 to fix it up. And literally it was a $50,000 total gut job. And he's looking at, I'm like, I swear to you, I've never been inside this house. I'm totally messed up on this one. And I'm just sitting there, and the woman comes out, and she's like, are you okay? I said, I can't buy this house. I said, I'm not even sure where to start with all this. I said, I've been looking at a house like 3 doors down. I thought that was the house I was buying. I said, obviously this is not that house. And it was just awful.
Well,
and
I get the call from you then,
I know.
and then I immediately called the attorney up. And luckily,
you'd worked with
I knew
her.
the attorney. I worked with her before, so yeah. But if it was another attorney, because we were on the hook,
Right.
we had no out to get out of this contract.
Yeah.
None
No, but it was quick. I think
So these
we
boys
released it,
worked
it
their
wasn't-
magic,
Yeah.
and
They were-
I
yeah,
left
they
on
were
my
out, but
vacation.
they were cool. It all worked out.
More jabs.
See how good she had?
That was second to Joliet. That was my
Julia was good.
worst real estate
And then the
experience.
question I kept asking is, how could you go into the?
I don't even have an answer for that. No, every time.
I say I did not understand.
Did you get an answer?
I did not. She was just like, it was-
I don't even know.
It's never happened since though. So
I'm looking at 20 houses at a time, and so I'm like, right, and I've got the listing sheets or pictures of the house, and I'm like, White House looks like a White House, and I think I typed in the GPS wrong. The GPS took me to the wrong place, and it was kind of an obscure little street, so it got me close enough. I'm like, oh, this must be the house. I don't even know. I can't. I have no.
There was still a for sale sign in front of
It
it.
was,
That's a freak situation.
I mean, think that I didn't walk in and somebody kill me.
Maybe like that was Carpentersville, right? Yeah.
That was in Carpentersville.
So maybe, well, it could get a little sketchy. But if you did like on the south side,
It was on the west side of Carpentersville.
and then right by the mall. I think.
Yeah.
Close.
But if you get a north and south, which we've done that before, I had a north
Oh yeah.
pay me the
Oh,
rent,
yeah.
and we had the south house, and north kept paying me. I don't know, so if we kept getting this money and we
This
don't
makes
have
me
this
feel
house
a little
rented. So if you get the same street with north and south, I could see
Yeah,
that.
or Avenue and Court. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just did that the other day actually in Hickory Hills. I was at the wrong house because I went on Court instead of Avenue, and then the neighbor. That's good. The neighbor walked up and was like, "What are you doing here?" They're not home. They're at work. And I said, "Oh, I'm here to see Vanessa." And like, "No, there's no one here by that name." So then I called the seller. She's like, "No, I'm one lane over. I never told you it's Court." I'm like,
So those of you
So, yeah.
guys who are thinking this is a perfect,
No,
My
yeah,
business, there's
you just
none
go
of
on with your
that. You gotta go.
But I think like so the major things, if I would give you advice on what to watch out for, like if you're doing like your first deal with a wholesaler, make sure that your attorney checks the title and the deed, because we've had like situations where they show up to closing and it's a fake deed. Like one of my guys, Andy,
Wow.
he said, yeah, so look, they're there to close 2 deals. The deeds are fake. The guy was a scammer. Some I don't even know, some Southside scammer. So just make sure, like
The
I guess.
wholesaler was?
Yeah, the wholesaler. He gave this guy like
What
a
would
fake
happen in
deed.
that situation? He walked
They
in-
probably would close on it, and then the title company would be on the hook for that, because they insure it. But here's the thing. So here, that's number 2 is always use a title company, because if you did, unless you really trust the person, you know. But if let's say in that situation they didn't use the title company, they'd be screwed.
They paid the
But
money.
you know
and
what though,
insurance.
guys? If you get really in good with the title company, I always do a preliminary title
Yeah.
search.
Sure. Yeah.
Always.
Yeah,
When I'm gonna do it, just because the same thing, I've ran into a lot of scam artists.
Yeah. What else? Seasoning. So that's another thing. It doesn't apply, but I know it depends on which foreclosures you buy. They might give you like a short sale if you get. They might give you like a 90-day seasoning, which means you can't really resell it. So just be aware of those little things. If you want to like flip it quick, you might not be able to if there's a seasoning. Just the whole thing is if you don't have to know all this stuff. You just have to hire the right person too. You know, get a good attorney like Jeff. Say, hey, he knows the situation. Check all this stuff for me. So you don't have to do it all, hand it off to him. But you want to make sure that he checks everything, you know, all that stuff.
And when you hire somebody like that, and we had a conversation about who to hire for the contractor, you might know somebody who could do it, but if they don't have the experience with it, you know, don't hire a divorce attorney to do your real estate. You know, you gotta hire the right person. A lot of times people call, they're like, hey, I need an attorney. Well, Jeff has a specialty that he works with, and he won't say yes to somebody for something that's outside of that. And you don't want somebody who's trying to be a jack of all trades. Whether, you know, even in the wholesaling business, you know, people kind of niche what they're going to be good at, and that's, I know I can trust you for the kind of houses that I'm looking at. You know, and again, the knowing who you're working with, because you're right. When I went through the Craigslist, I don't know how many people I called.
So many.
It was you, Adam Duval, and just a couple other ones that I.
He's out of the business now.
Is he?
Yeah.
He's doing like
Insurance, I think.
something else, yeah. So you know, and he was nice.
Hmm?
He was. I felt like I trusted him, but he wasn't a go-getter like Mark is. You know, I knew that I could find a house with Mark if I tell him, hey, this is what I'm looking for, or if I did have a house, and I haven't done the wholesaling, Pedro and Alex have, they found a house doing all the research, and Mark was able to get rid of it fast.
Provided you don't run into any issues with titles or deeds or anything like that, is there any problem buying something wholesale and then selling it traditionally on the MLS or turning it into a rental property? You
Not
can do
at all.
whatever you want once you
Here,
own it.
I was going to talk about that. Great question. I just closed on a house in Indy, so I do Chicago and Indy. Got a real good deal. So the way that I do it there is I'll close on it with my cash, put it on the MLS to find like a local rehabber buyer, because I don't have as many buyers there. So like this one I closed for 22. We marketed at 44.9. So the first like 3 weeks I'll see if I can get like a local buyer, like a local, either someone that's going to live there, you know, whatever it is. If not, then reduce the price. If I don't get anything within 30 days, then I'll put some money into it, and then I'll probably either just prehab it, sell it to like a prehabber, or keep it as a rental, or just do the full. It's kind of, you know, it's like a 60-day thing. But that's a great, yeah, because it's a business, you know. So you got to always look at it. How can I monetize off this?
Sure.
If you can buy it and make a quick 15 off it within 30 days, for me that's way better than holding on to it for 6 months, making 40, 50. But it depends on your business model. Everyone's got to figure out what you want to make, what you want to do, your timing, you know,
And
that
what
kind
you're
of
good
thing. That's
at.
a great, yeah.
Because I mean, who would you say are the big players in Chicago? There's not more than a handful of them.
For wholesalers?
Yeah,
Yeah, Rich,
Vince.
Vince is good. Who else? Those are mostly 2 that I deal with.
Yeah.
I mean, I deal with them all, but like as far as that are constantly there.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the tricky thing with somebody getting into wholesaling is most people aren't successful at it
Yeah.
because most people aren't doing what Mark's doing. So even when I'm looking at some other deals that I'm going out on Craigslist, I found deals through somebody else, but I'm still going to call Mark because I'd rather see him get part of the assignment fee because I know him, I trust him. He's going to make sure I'm dealing with somebody else who's also trustworthy. So there's a huge part.
It's all just, you know, for you guys having irons in the fire, you know, so you got like an army of bird dog realtors that are looking deals for you, and then you want wholesalers, you know, 10 of them, whatever, to bring you deals, because you're a business. So basically, your job is to look at the deals that come in. Numbers make sense? Yes. Numbers make sense? No. You don't want to spend too much time on it, analyzing it. Because I didn't realize after a day, man, I analyzed 200 deals. I took too long and nothing happened. I didn't make any money. So you kind of want to. Your goal is when something comes in, either eliminate, outsource, or make a decision on it right away. Like, numbers make sense? All right, I'll either rehab it, wholesale it, whatever it is. Or, I don't like this area, I'll either pass it off to someone else or just no.
So Mark's also a great contact. When you talked about the Indiana stuff, when we were talking about a $5, $10, $15, $20,000 house, he's a great contact for that. Because he's got people there who are, he's buying them himself. So if the wholesaler's buying the properties, that he can find you some good deals.
Sure.
So do you generally do this sight unseen? You're wholesaling these houses without actually going and...
I don't want to look at them.
Yeah.
Even like here, half the houses that I flip here, I don't even see. There's a situation where sometimes you got to meet with a seller, but I would rather not. It's just easier. I would actually, like for the Indiana, I got a good realtor that I know there. Actually I don't even pay him, I pay him for the listing. So I say, hey John, I got this deal, can you go look at it? So he'll take a look at it and he knows what to check, the neighborhood, the rehab. He'll give me back the numbers, and then so I'm leveraging his time, resources, everything. He'll get back to me, and then I'll look at it. Okay, this looks good, so we'll sign off on it. So I would prefer not to, but the whole key is you can't just do it without sending someone out there to look at it. You got to have someone trustworthy. Someone has to, yeah. But it doesn't have to be you though. Initially though, I would say, here, let me just add, I would say for you guys to initially look at them, just so you know what you're looking at, the numbers, the rehab costs, because then you can write all that down and give it to, whoever, hey, Mr. Realtor, take a look at this. This is what, my buying criteria, so make sure, you go according to this. So for the first couple, I would do it, but.
Purchasing from you, can we go and look at properties? Like, you give me a list of properties, can I go?
So that's what we do.
Check it out?
He'll send it to me, even if he hasn't seen it. Sometimes I'm the first person to look at it.
Sure.
And I'll snap some pictures just because it's in my backyard, and I'm going to go over there and I'll say, hey, I'm interested or I'm not interested, or realistically, this is probably what you can get for it. So, we all work together. Rick is calling me with properties, Mark, we all work together and we want to help each other. Because if I can help Mark be successful and, be the #1 wholesaler, he's going to help us because he's going to have more inventory.
Yeah.
So it's all of this.
It's not a competition, it's really a co-opetition, it really is. Like getting into the business, at first I'm thinking like, no, I gotta do it, no one can, we can't work with anyone. No, it's a stupid mentality.
Those people will be out of it.
But I was guilty of it,
Yeah.
But you also get stuck when you don't have cash or you don't have, you got too many properties on the plate, and I would rather give it to somebody I know than somebody I don't know. And then in turn, when they get in the same situation, you'll get one back.
And they're going to take care of the seller, which you want to do the right thing too. Yeah.
So Mark, what happens if you get stuck with the property? Let's say you try to wholesale it, you're getting close to the closing date, you can't find someone to buy it.
Yeah, we were just talking about that.
Yeah, so can you tell the group like what
yeah, so like in that situation, so the whole thing, if you go direct to seller, what you want to do is try to get the longest inspection period that you can, or however long you think. If I get a house like in Elgin, I know I'll do like a 3-day or 5-day because I know I'll be able to sell it. But let's say in an area where I'm not as sure, you want to try to negotiate as long as you can. So whether it's like, I did 30 days before, so it's like a 35-day close with a 30-day inspection. No realtor would be like, I'm not going to allow this. It's all negotiable.
And it's a distressed seller. Remember, they're as motivated to sell it, or probably more so than you are to buy it. So it's not like they have a whole lineup of people. They're wholesaling it for a reason. There's a reason why they're not just doing the traditional route.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's just because they like to work with, if Mark calls them up and he's making them feel good. In the case of somebody whose mom just died, I remember for that one lady, you made her feel good and she wanted to work with you. And I had a conversation with her. She's like, all these realtors came in and they didn't make me feel good. And they were talking about all this commission and...
It's a human being business. The one, it's not about the real estate. Connect with your audience, with whoever it is, your seller, your buyer, just, hey, I'm here to help you. Not like, commission breath, here, sign here. Here, to protect you guys, this is good. Let me finish this thought. So, with the inspection period, you can put that any other way. 30-day inspection period, subject to partner's approval, subject to buyer's attorney. There's a couple, I know some people don't like it because it's a little deceiving. I just do 14-day inspection period. And then in the event of default, sole remedy is earnest. That's very important. Make sure. If you're wholesaling a property, put that in there. Because that means, let's say, it doesn't happen frequently, but if you can't wholesale a property, you can't find a buyer, or for whatever reason you can't sell the property, and you gave them earnest, the seller, I've had a couple times where they try to go after me. But and I put in the event of default, sole remedy is earnest. So, and I actually put like $10. So, but it's whatever you can negotiate. Now, I'm not saying that you're in the business of doing that. It's maybe one or two that's ever happened. And I really tried everything that I could, but that's life. So you want to protect yourself. Always put that in there. Always put that in there. 14-day inspection at least. In the event of default, sole remedy is earnest money. And then for the earnest, you want to get that as little or nothing as possible.
Yeah.
I was just at a workshop, last week where the guy doesn't even leave a space on the contract for earnest. It's good, but because he markets to, he doesn't do the traditional route. He markets to individual sellers. He sells turnkey. So, and it's true. He closes typically like in a week anyway before it's even an issue. So.
And so some of these things, I mean, you realtors are probably like, what?
Yeah, it's different.
No.
Trust me, it's all legal too.
Yeah, it's totally on the up and up. But it's a very stark contrast to when we're going in and we're doing that because the MLS has more people looking at it. And there's a little bit more competition, if you will. So there's also more inventory with that. So you can't, no REO, no realtor is going to accept a contract that says subject to partner approval. They're going to be like, they're not going to look at it. Yeah. But with this, you can write all kinds of squirrely things in there that are all legal and on the up and up, but they give us the upper hand as the people, especially when you're coming in with cash, which you have to in these deals, or with the partner.
Yeah, bank is not going to like it. They're not going to approve of that.
No.
Realtor's not
Subject
going
to
to
attorney approval though is very common.
Yeah,
sure, that's a good one too.
Yeah.
So that's always a loophole.
See, the challenge too is when the seller's attorney get involved too, because they want to charge their clients. I mean, I know they want to do the right thing, but sometimes they'll say there's no attorneys in the room.
Just the one.
Other than the joke, right? Yeah,
He doesn't count.
But it's very practical. They'll always put, line 73 has to be this, line 43 has to be this, and they'll change 10 things, which is all like, sure, it doesn't really matter, but they want to. I'm not saying you do, but I've seen a lot where they'll just. Line 47 negates line 18, but they'll put it on there anyway because they still want to build their client to make sure that they're doing the right thing. So it could get a little squirrely too when the attorneys get involved, the seller attorneys sometimes, because they'll be very rigid on what they want to do. So even though, I always say I'm a deal maker, not a deal breaker. So if it comes to me and no, Mark, you have to put down 500 earnest and these conditions have to be met. So if they're practical, I'll still go with them. So you got to we're just talking about that. You got to be a little flexible in this business sometimes. So.
But sometimes walking away from 500 to 1,000 earnest is better than all of a sudden you did some due diligence or getting stuck with something you can't handle.
Right.
Yeah. And I've done it and it hurts, but you just next.
I know both of you are looking at me. What are you thinking?
I'm not saying anything.
North Central.
I'm not even bringing it up.
The mind reader industry.
We've done that. We've done that. We've all done it, So expect that stuff like this. You will all experience. Man, I wish I didn't do that.
Especially when
You got to move on.
Especially when you do it as a couple. We have several couples here, married couples,
Yeah.
and it'll.
We got it.
Yeah, you've done it already. So.
Always find your professional, that person in an area that knows that market before you say yes, just because I've done it and I've lost money more ways than anybody can think of.
And what'd you say upstairs? You lost $4 million in 1 year?
1 year, lost $4 million.
And you will never do that again, and you
I know
made
all the
more
wrong
from the
ways.
learning from it.
I know all the wrong ways to do it now.
And it's so true that when you're learning about the business, it's probably more learning what not to do than learning what to do. And that comes from experience, and so the more experienced people you get around, the more, I learned from Rick what not to do, I learned from Mark what not to do. It's something that we have like this collective real estate investing consciousness that we want to share with each other.
What we've messed up, but the point is you got to go out there and do it, because if you just sit on the sidelines and say, well, there's too much risk, but truly, right, 80% of success is just showing up. So for to getting like these contracts, showing up means just send the offers. Yeah. Even though you look at it and say, who would accept this? But honestly, right? Sometimes, but you send it out because they know what time it is. If they say, hey man, I got this situation, I have to sell by next Friday, so I'm okay giving up a little bit of equity for it. So not everyone's going to do it. Then for me, the numbers are 1 out of 25. So it's just a numbers game. You got to send out 25 offers, and I know I'll get one wholesale deal. So if I hear a no, it doesn't really matter because it's like, all right, well that's 7. Now I just need 18 more. To look at it. So that's all it is. It's truly a numbers game.
Yeah, and what's going on in the seller's mind, I just got a message from somebody. They said, are you interested in buying a mountain property in North Carolina? They want $80,000 for it. And I'm like, not really, but what's the backstory to it? Their house was being foreclosed on Thursday, and it was $50,000 that they needed to prevent the foreclosure. if they just threw it out there and said, I'm desperate to sell this house, they could contact somebody like you. You could probably spin it and get $60,000. So now they've avoided their foreclosure. I guarantee you that they went into foreclosure because they didn't have somebody who they could work with, or they didn't have the mindset of, and I can also guarantee you that Mark or somebody in North Carolina would have a buyer for a property like that, because it's a third of what the value is. But it's those relationships. He's the ultimate matchmaker of the buyers, the sellers, the distressed.
That's a good point, though. I like that. That's a great example because, right, just like poker, some people you call them and they'll say, "Oh my God, I'm losing everything. I got to sell." Like this situation, I have to sell by Friday. That's good. But other people are gonna like keep their cards to themselves and they'll say, "Well, I'm thinking about selling, but this, and this." So your whole goal is to get to the root of the onion. In other words, right? Talk to them, connect with them. What's your reason for selling? And then, so the most important questions are, what's your reason for selling? What's most important to you? Because if you ask those and just shut up and let them talk, they'll tell you. They'll tell you, hey, all right, fine. I tell you what, I'm losing it by Friday, so we have to do something.
Yeah.
Bam, okay. Then you know.
Yeah.
So.
So you're the solutions guy for a lot of very stressed out people.
But the other thing is, you want to do the right thing to not take advantage of them. So in this situation, you're right. What I would do is say, okay, so you need 50. How about I give you another 10 to move on to your next place? Mm-hmm. So it's still a deal. You get it at 60, you get a wholesale for 80. Whatever it is, to literally help them out. Don't try to abandon them. So.
Just because you have the right to doesn't mean you should.
Yeah, exactly.
That's kind of our philosophy.
If that's going to keep you up at night, one of those things, right? You do the right thing. Do the right thing.
Okay, question. Sometimes I'll get an email from various wholesalers, and it might say in there, ARV is this, repair cost is this, sale cost is this, you got 5 days, jump. How reliable are their ARV and repair costs? How much do I need to discount those numbers when I see those types of things?
Depends on the wholesaler, right?
Do your own.
Yeah, you always want to do your own, no matter what.
Trust and verify. So if Mark sends me something, I trust him, but I'm going to run. I'm not going to buy a property based on what somebody sent me in an email. I'm going to do all the same, everything that we talked about. I'm going to do all of that on any property. I don't care if my brother's trying to sell it to me.
Probably more than.
But
Aries not 90 right
now. Crazy. From a reputable wholesaler, it's a great starting point, but you always have to do it. Their numbers could be based on something that happened 6 months ago, or their numbers could be a speculation of where they think it's going in 6 months. So when you do it, same as if you're looking at any other house. Mm-hmm. The reality is you probably have a little bit more to work with when you buy from a wholesaler, because they're able to squeeze the price down a little bit. Yeah. Let's open it up for questions. This is
got a card?
really good.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, so I'd like for all of you guys let's do this. Well, actually, Rachel has everybody's information. We'll get that over. Does everybody want to have access to this?
Yes.
If you don't, tell me, and I'll make sure you don't get on there. I know he doesn't spam or.
Just don't be like John on my list. I think is on my list, but doesn't buy normally.
Well, I haven't taken my